Hi, I'm Sister Simone Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice and leader of Nuns on the Bus. And I'm so glad you're joining us for our first ever conversation, a dialogue across geographic divides. We're here in Pennsylvania. And last year we did a rural roundtable in Pennsylvania. And today we're going to do our first ever conversation with some urban folks, some rural folks, having a conversation about the needs of Pennsylvania. So let me invite in our participants so that you can meet them. Come on in, y'all. Great. So why don't you all unmute yourselves and let's get started with brief introductions. Who you are, where you live, and who you're representing. Susan, why don't you start?
Good morning. I'm Susan Williams. I'm the president of the Venango Area Chamber of Commerce in northwestern Pennsylvania.
Great. And in your office, through technical difficulties, is Bonnie, who's going to introduce herself. Bonnie, can you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, I'm Bonnie Summers. I am retired currently. I am a former Human Services Administrator and County Commissioner, and I am currently involved in many economic development opportunities and nonprofit boards.
That's great. You're in Venango County also, I know. So glad you're here, persevering. Megan, please.
Hi, I'm Megan Dunham, and I'm the Social Services Director at Community Services of Venango County.
Great. Thanks for being here. Janine, where are you based?
Yeah, good morning. This is Janine Miller from Project Home in Philadelphia. So glad to be here with you today.
And what's your role at Project Home?
I'm the Director of Advocacy and Civic Engagement.
Fabulous. Glad you're here, Janine. Sister Janice, where are you?
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Sister Janice Vanderneck. I'm a sister of St. Joseph from outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a town called Baden, Pennsylvania. I am the founding director of the agency Casa San Jose. We are named for the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Excelente. Excelente. Perfect.
We serve Latino immigrants. Most of our clients are low income and Spanish speaking only, or indigenous language speaking only.
Fabulous. Thanks for being with us, Sister Janice. Sister Ann, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Sister Ann Provost. I'm a Sister of Mercy, and I'm Executive Director of Mercy Neighborhood Ministries in North Philadelphia.
A great place on our first bus trip. We stopped there. It was perfect. Okay, and Rita, you've joined us. Could you identify yourself and where you're from?
Hi, Rita Scrimenti, Erie, Pennsylvania, and I work at Emmaus Ministries. It's a soup kitchen, food pantry, and we operate a kids cafe. And we try to do our best to serve guests throughout the Erie community.
Super. All right, now through the magic of technology, my backstage elves are going to whisk away our city dwellers so that us rural folks can have about a 10-minute conversation on the rural reality. And so we've got Susan, Bonnie, and Megan, who are going to talk about the reality that they're facing in rural Pennsylvania. But what I have to tell you is, those of you that know Pennsylvania looking at this, I always hear that there is Pittsburgh and there's Philadelphia and there's the unacknowledged bulk of the state of Pennsylvania that goes ignored in Harrisburg, the capital. So I'm really curious for the three of you to talk a little bit about what your lived experiences are and what your concerns are, because nationally we've been facing a lot of challenges since I saw you back in last year. So I'm really curious, how are things now? What's going on? What are the tensions that you're experiencing? And how do you see the situation? So Megan, do you want to kick off and get us started with?
Sure. Obviously, these have been uncertain times, and with COVID, it's been a challenge. Funding has been available through the CARES Act and through other programming, so that's been very beneficial. So recently, in recent times, things have been easier to access services than what has been in the past.
Oh, good.
which is nice. I mean, as far as our rural community, the only thing that I am honestly concerned about is once the moratoriums are done and everything, and we actually hit our new year of 2021, what is that going to look like for landlords, renters, tenants, the utility commissions, and wanting to get bills paid. And that's what we're kind of planning for next, is what's going to happen afterwards.
Good point. Well, Susan, I'm curious, have you seen, you're with the Chamber of Commerce. Have you seen struggles for small business, or what's been the experience from the business community at this point?
Absolutely. There, was the initial struggle of the shutdown. Now, as a Chamber of Commerce, I have members who are really, really resourceful. So we saw that resourcefulness come full for businesses that were trying to figure out how to get open or how to operate in a different way than they were used to. Now, we've had a problem for quite some time that, while there are high unemployment numbers like there are across the country, we also struggle to find people to fill the jobs we need. We actually struggle to grow many of our businesses because they can't find people who are work ready. And I'm really talking about soft skills. There's a lot of training available. So that problem has actually become exacerbated by the current situation. Initially because there were wonderful benefits that helped people get through the pandemic. And now, as people are getting the opportunity to go back to work, it's transitioning people back into work. So there are things that are probably unique to rural communities, but I talk often to chamber directors across the country in communities of all sizes, and they're probably more in common than not.
That's interesting. Bonnie, okay, we're going to use our, this is sort of like playing telephone as a kid, where you would, whisper through a variety of devices, tin cans and strings to try to communicate. So hopefully this works. Bonnie, what's been your experience with some of the social service needs in your community?
One of the main things that we've been faced with currently that's been exacerbated because of COVID is the broadband. As you can see, or as you know, it's very difficult for me to even get on, and I'm relatively close to the city. The further you get out into the rural areas, there's a lot of areas that are dead, that do not have any internet, and this has really been a problem for especially kids, for the educational aspect, as well as for parents or individuals who need to work from home. One of the things that we had looked at was the map for Pennsylvania from the SBC, and it's identified that across the state we're supposed to be pretty much connected. However, the reality is for the rural area is that's not the case. There's a lot of that are unconnected, or that the speed in width is so poor. So that's one thing that we really need to get on and get done. There's not, as far as I'm concerned, there isn't any reason why that isn't being done or can't be done. And I think that's been identified, at the legislative level, feds, and in the state level, and we can get it done. So that's probably the main issues that we see right now.
Right. Well, you're Exhibit A of what it took to get us connected for this conversation. So a great witness to that. I'm curious, you were saying, Megan, that the CARES Act helped, but you're concerned about the, what's going to happen when all of this expires. But I'm also aware that much of the CARES Act money is running out. I'm wondering how maybe some of your constituents are experiencing that also, with PPP being ended. I'm sure many of your businesses benefited from that. So are you worried about what's going to happen this fall and how all this is going to play out?
Yes. And the reason why I'm concerned about it is because it does, and this is not for all, and I'm not saying that, but when you allow and you say you don't have to pay, you don't have to do this until December 31st, some individuals are hearing, I don't have to pay. And so Yeah. And so then that ends up building, and I've spoken with many landlords on this as an issue, because ultimately at this point, landlords are not allowed to evict, they're not allowed to do things, and that's totally understandable. And it's put back onto the tenant to be able to work one-on-one with their landlords. Some are, and some are not. And those that are not are utilizing this time, basically stating, we don't have to pay now until December 31st. So our landlords, what I'm fearful of is not only are the landlords going to be owed a significant amount of money, but also we're going to lose our house. We're going to lose the people that provide our housing for us, because as a landlord and working with landlords, that's when you step in and you say you can't do anything,
right?
As far as evictions, or my fear is that after December 31st that we're going to lose some landlords that are willing to rent their properties. I mean, and honestly, COVID just exposed how housing is such an issue anyway, and then it's just kind of grown from there. So that is my concern, is that after the year, we're really going to have to, social service agencies such as myself, local, like our county offices, and even our local churches, everybody's going to have to step up to help these individuals. And I'm very,
it's going to be a crisis in winter.
Yeah. And if I could add, I think that's something that when you talk in the urban areas, they're going to have a similar experience. What's different in rural communities is we are seeing an influx of people that are interested in moving to our communities, because we have very, very low COVID numbers here in our region. We have very low cost of living in terms of homes. So right now we have a shortage of inventory for the real estate market. So anything that is desirable as a particularly move-in ready, but even a good fixer-upper, they're selling as quickly as they are listed. So if there are people with good rentals and they're not able to collect rent, those homes might start to see that they're going to go on the market soon.
Then you're going to lose housing stock, and then you're just going to be, the last will be worse than the first.
As a rule, we have had an abundance of housing stock in Venango County over the last 15, 20 years because our population declined, but that most of that excess housing stock is not good stock. Those are homes that they're blighted, they're coming down. If someone is living in them, it may be part of the problem Megan is dealing with. They're not really great. So anything at the top end of that excess housing stock is starting to move very quickly as we attract people to the rural communities.
Wow. Can we ask Bonnie if she wants to get in on this, and then we have to bring in the urban folks and find out what's going on. Where are those people coming from? That's what I want to hear about. Okay, Bonnie, do you want in on this?
Bonnie, have you been able to hear us?
Kind of, just off and on. But you're talking about now the issues that we're going to be facing because of COVID. Is that?
Well, I think something that Bonnie can add to the conversation here, I know she's very well aware of, is senior housing.
Please talk to us about it.
Around senior housing. Can you talk about that, Bonnie?
Sure. One of the things that we've been looking at is, of course, senior housing. We have a stock of housing available in the county. However, we have quite a bit of houses that are vacant and are blighted. And so we're in the process of trying to remove some of that blight. And in doing that also, there's a real need for individuals. We have an older population. We're probably one of the counties that has a little bit older population than there is known across the state. And we have a real need for housing. What we've done is we've tried to identify housing, the need, and then going after the grants for that. And doing that for the last 3 years.
Wow.
Funding sources, and we have not been able to get those grants in rural area. This past year, one thing that you mentioned is that what seems to be known across the area is there's a Philly and there's Pittsburgh and then there's us in between.
I've heard it, yes.
What happened this past year is that the grants that we're giving out to the urban areas, and the rural areas were not funded at this point, which then puts us back another year to try and go after additional grants. There's a real need. We've done surveys, of course, and there's a real need for senior citizens or older adults to have housing available that can meet their needs. Really, that's at a point right now that we are trying to do everything we can to put our resources into that effort.
Wow.
And I think
that's
that
really informative. Okay, you're going to get a chance to come back in, but I've got to move this on so we get our city folk in.
Great.
Hear about those folks that got all the money from the last invocation. So,
well, I bet you're going to hear about transportation, and that tags right along.
Okay, transportation. Let me pick that one up with the next group, and then we'll put you all back together after 10 minutes. So you all get to listen while we exchange folks here. So my tech wizards. And while they're doing that, let me just give you a few details about Pennsylvania. Is that as of June 2020, there was a 13% unemployment rate, and that the almost 17% of the children in the state were living in low-income households at poverty level, below the poverty level, and 8% of the adults between the age of 19 and 64 did not have health insurance. So there's some issues that, in addition to the housing issue, that I'm sure we can talk about. Okay, city folk, welcome. Glad you're here. You got a chance to hear what our rural folks were talking about, and I'm curious. Maybe Janine, since you're with Project Home, maybe you could start this off just very briefly, because I'm sure you can get into the deep weeds of this, about what the Philadelphia experience is of the of this issue of housing, and then at the last they tossed in transportation. I'm sure it all relates. So, could you just give us a little bit of your perspective?
Yeah, sure. At Project Home, so we're in Philadelphia, and I really resonated with what so many of our friends were just talking about. Like we're worried too, and we've seen we always see a need for housing and food, but during this pandemic, we've just seen such a heightened need. One of the things that we are most proud of during the last couple months has been that we were actually able to open up some new affordable housing. So many people are on our streets and are seeking affordable housing really around our whole state. And we, through the help of the low-income housing tax credits, we were able, in the midst of all this, to open up affordable housing for 42 community members. And while that's just like a drop in the bucket for the big need, we're really proud of that work to make sure that, some people were able to come home. And of course, there are more people on our streets and seeking housing. And we've seen through this whole process trying to support our community members to access food, to access housing, to really support people to get through this pandemic and not just survive, but continue to thrive in their long-term goals as well.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Sister Janice, how have you been experiencing this? Are you aware of the housing issue, or what issues strike you as being the most critical?
Well, I work at the agency Casa San Jose, and our mission is to provide resources for Latino immigrants. Most of our population are low income. And
you're in the western part of Pennsylvania, right?
Our office is in Pittsburgh, and that is Western Pennsylvania, yes. And with COVID, let me back up. Our population is very, very vulnerable. Principally those who don't have immigration status.
Yeah.
When I first started this work in 2003, that population was mostly undocumented. But within the past 5 years, we've been receiving more and more asylum seekers. They are stuck in a process, that is not advancing because the immigration policies of our country are so enforcement only priority. And so many of our clients are asylum seekers. In other words, immigration knows they're here, but they can't move forward. So our population is low income and vulnerable. During COVID, we've seen that very much exacerbated in the need for food. Our population hasn't been evicted because of the moratorium on evictions, but they are very concerned that rent is going to be owed and it's mounting up. There is a program in the state, which I hope Venango County is using, to help renters with back payments. And some of our clients are eligible for that. There's stuff in the city of Pittsburgh. Yes, it is true that in the city there are many more resources. But I work with, since we are the only agency that reaches out to Latinos wherever they are in southwestern Pennsylvania, we work with folks in all the counties. And yes, transportation is huge.
Yes.
With our folks who live at such a distance.
Right.
Their needs.
Okay. I think that's really important, and I'm just aware of time here. So let me get Mr. Ann into the conversation. And Rita from Erie's been flitting in and out. I don't know if we're going to get her back. I think it's a connection problem. Sister Ann, what's your experience at this point?
Our experience has been similar to what the others are saying. Our services are for the families in the neighborhood. We have
Erie, right?
a preschool. No, we're Philadelphia.
Okay. Sorry. So, Mercy. I blended. I did the horrible thing of blending Pennsylvania. That was wrong.
That's right. We have the preschool program, and that services probably 60 to 70 families. And then we have adult education, and we have adult daycare. So, and we've kept weekly conferences with our families. And it's very similar to the concerns everyone has been saying. Food was a major concern, particularly for our families with children. So what we have been able to do is through the COVID generosity of so many people, we've been able to provide for them monthly gift cards, those types of things, also to help with the distribution of food. For our seniors, we were able to keep their weekly food. We were able to get that from the same people who do food for them when they're here. And then the families would pick up a week's worth of food. So food was a real concern because the families were not used to having their children at home. They were not used to having to do that. Because the children were home, they couldn't go to work. And so they were really struggling. And of course, doing virtual learning is extremely difficult with them because lack of sufficient internet, even like in the city. We've been part of an organization with Temple. Temple has started
University?
Temple Hospital University, yes, with them. And they've been calling all the small nonprofits in the area together on a weekly basis to talk about the needs and to help do food, to help. They're looking at internet now. How can we get that to our families? They're looking at these major issues, but our issues are the same. I do have the same fear that was mentioned before with the rent. That
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, Sister Ann. I'm just aware of time. Can I just ask the city folk, and you mentioned, Sister Janice, that there are more resources in the urban reality, but I was curious, the end of the world, the conversation with the folks from Venango County mentioned that folks were moving in. Are you aware of folks moving out of the city or trying to get to other places? Is that a different demographic than the folks that you serve? I'm just curious about that. Are you seeing any of the three of you? Are you seeing any movement in that regard? Or?
No, I'm not aware of persons moving out. Although I think I may have mentioned that I'm seeing many more immigrants in the surrounding counties than I've ever known of before. And those are rural counties.
Okay, so you're sort of the bridge place where, Janine, in Philadelphia with Project Home, I mean, you talk about the huge need that exists for folks that aren't able to find housing. Do you see any movement among them, or they're pretty much staying in the community?
I mean, people still need housing. People are still living on our streets. We're still trying to help people access affordable housing. And I think right now we're really focused on both the like short-term needs right now. So, you know, with the CARES Act money expiring, we really need our politicians to like have that political will to take the next step. And so we're looking towards even something like the HEROES Act, which would help with more short-term needs like rental assistance, support for homeless programs, unemployment, healthcare coverage. Those things, like our community still need those things. And that is something that is so critical right now. So we really need our politicians to be a hero, to take care of our people through the HEROES Act, and while at the same time holding the more long-term needs. Because I hear your question about like our community needs these resources. They don't have other options. I think people would love to do other things, but don't really have those resources. That's not something we're seeing. But with there's a proposal out there for the Moving Forward Act, and we see that as this long-term infrastructure bill that will help our communities. Project Home sees that, especially with the low-income housing tax credit, was only how we were able to build and open up affordable housing during a pandemic was because of that. But that bill could also provide things like more access to affordable homes, roads, bridges, jobs, clean energy, all of that business that is so important for our community.
Yeah, policy can make a difference. I hear that. Okay, now city folk, let's invite the rural folk in and let's get a conversation going in all of Pennsylvania, where we're not just looking at the two sides of the state, but we are embracing the totality. And at the very end, Susan, I think it was you, Susan, who lifted up the issue of transportation as a critical issue. And having driven out to Oil City, I sort of know what that is like. So I wonder if we could maybe shift from the housing issue to some of these other, because the food issue, as well as what I hear, the education, transportation issues. I wonder if we could explore that a bit together as the state reality, because what our statistics that are up on our interactive website for our bus, nunsonthebus.2020.org, is that 21.3% of the population lives in rural areas, and that the challenge is that 11% of the population across the whole state in July of 2020 reported food scarcity, which is worse than just insecurity. So I'm curious, how are you all experiencing that? How does this play out?
Well, here at Casa San Jose, we have actually transformed and also taken on the mission of being a food bank. During coronavirus, we received tremendous support and donations from folks who were concerned about our population being hungry. And our population is very young, lots of children and youth. So we've got donations of food and have been distributing donations of food. And the need is also in the surrounding counties among the immigrant population.
At Community Services, I run our local clothing rooms and food pantries as well. And we saw right when, before COVID and right at the start of COVID, I saw our numbers were large and had an increase from March through June. I will say that a lot of our local agencies also participated in to help with. We had like Second Harvest came and they did a whole series of dairy giveaways, and we as a community, what I have felt and have seen is that we have worked together to help our people in our community. And I can say that our food pantry has been able to give out, we've received donations, and we've been able to actually give out double what we typically had given out prior to COVID to try to combat the food scare, because I mean, honestly, that's, when you affect somebody's ability to be able to eat and provide for their family, that's a huge issue.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like we as a county, as a city, as agencies, I think that at least our area, I feel we've done really well with providing food and making sure the individuals in our community have food.
Yeah.
And we hear that across the community, the collaboration, and across really communities all over, that COVID has created collaborative efforts that we haven't seen in the past.
Do you think we'll be able to sustain this past COVID? This might be some silver lining.
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, one thing that this has really done has brought all of us together. And I know, at least in our Venango County, I have just been taken back by how amazing our community members have been, our agencies, local businesses supporting everyone. I mean, it's been amazing to see, and I would love to see this continue on past. Because that at least it's paved the way for that. So let's hope that we as a county can continue doing that together.
Oh, Janine, why don't you put into this conversation what you just put in the chat?
Sure. We just, before the pandemic, we were supporting about 40 families a month in our neighborhood center to give out food. And then during COVID, we've been giving out 400 boxes of food a week. So it's just been a tremendous need in the community.
So while there's more resources in the city, there's a bigger need, harder to match, harder to mobilize community, I would think. Wow, what a challenge. What a challenge. I'm curious on this transportation issue. I'm aware that with people sheltering in place, that there is some less need, but in order to get boxes of food or to get services, to find resources, how are you experiencing? And I myself, I live in Washington, D.C. I don't have a car, so these days I only bike places. I'll meet I'll go any place that's biking distance. I don't ride the metro because it makes me nervous. So I'm curious how you all are experiencing that with the folks that you know. How are people getting around?
As I said, the city has many resources, and folks who live in all the surrounding counties need to get into those resources in the city. COVID or not, if you have a healthcare need, you have to find a doctor or a clinic that you can afford. And so I find myself studying the bus routes in all the surrounding counties and what times they depart and where do they meet in downtown Pittsburgh.
Wow, that's a great service.
Yeah, we don't have the infrastructure of public transportation that you have. We do have, CATA is our local bus service, but it's very limited. So even pre-COVID, the challenge of getting people to work, we have jobs that we just can't get people to because there isn't public transportation. We don't have a really active Uber and those kind of services. So then add to that with COVID, with education, some of the busing is limited. Getting children to activities or to hotspots, because some of the schools are setting up places where people can get to hotspots to connect and download. But transportation is a long-standing rural challenge and expensive, really expensive to resolve.
Yes. And I absolutely agree with you, Susan.
She would
Bonnie wants in.
like to speak. Go ahead, Bonnie.
One of the things that we saw in Venango with the food distributions is that there was a problem getting to the food distributions, although that they, we then tried to go out into the communities and where the people were. However, what was really beneficial was the additional money that was made available through the SNAP program because the kids weren't in school, so that they had additional monies to go and purchase food. That was probably one of the most beneficial, and then it stopped, of course. But I think that's what needs to be considered when you take a look at where the need for the food is when people cannot get to those distribution sites.
And our rural communities no longer, many of them no longer have an active church. Of course, neighborhood schools have closed. So even identifying good community centers, it's probably going to be the volunteer fire department is most likely. But right. We don't have the community hubs that we had when I was growing up.
Oh, interesting.
One thing we have going, by we, I mean the Pennsylvania Immigrant and Internet Conference, PIC, is driving PA forward, and it's a effort to try to get driver's license for all immigrants, legal or without papers. There are certain levels of your immigration process here in Pennsylvania where you can't get a driver's license, and as well if you don't have a social security number. Many states do provide it though, and it would mean a huge assist on that thing of getting to the resources that you need.
Also provide some safety. I know when I was in California, undocumented were banned from getting driver's license. We realized that's just not a good safety thing, because if people are driving without a license, well, they don't have insurance, they don't have training. Let's be safe on our roads, if nothing else.
Nightmare.
Okay, we're getting close to time, and one other issue that I just wanted to raise briefly was the experience of healthcare in the urban and the rural setting. You mentioned it tangentially about getting to doctor's appointments, but I'm curious, in this time when healthcare is we're so aware of the need for quality healthcare. How is this? How is it going? Are folks able to get medical care? Is it working? What's happening at this point? And maybe we can do a lightning round or something.
I might be able to add more than I can on this, but I will say that what we hear from the hospital is we absolutely need better transportation options for people that need to get to either Erie or Pittsburgh, to the larger areas. Yes. There's been a lot of investment locally in telemedicine, yes, so that people can get out to the hospital or even from their homes. They're trying to make that available. But we have struggled to attract doctors, especially specialists, to our rural communities in the past for all the obvious reasons of doctors maybe not wanting to live in more rural setting. We are hopeful that actually this new situation of the pandemic will make it more attractive to live in a rural community in a safe community where they may feel, attracted to. But broadband is going to be really, really important. They're not going to have, doctors aren't going to have a transportation problem, and they may not have a problem finding a home, but they may buy a home in a rural community where they can't connect and their families aren't happy living. Because we do have challenges.
Good point. Good. These are all connected, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. I find that in our surrounding rural counties here, it's nonprofits and faith-based groups that start clinics and do a heroic job of trying to provide for those who are underinsured or uninsured. And one interesting thing is the first real frontline workers for giving testing here in Pittsburgh came from one such clinic in Beaver County, from the rural area.
Bravo, bravo.
I think Bonnie was hoping to add something here too.
Oh, Bonnie, please.
I just wanted to say some of the biggest need is our dentists. We really, really need dentists in this area. We're very, very taking a look at the stats for the state, and then us, we're way below the stats of individuals per dentist. And one of the things that we're also seeing with our dentists is most of them are getting older. And we don't have the younger ones coming in. So that's a real need, especially when you take a look at the kids who, at our high poverty level. 20% of our kids under 18 live in poverty, and there's a real need for dentistry, and they're not receiving it. The other area that we have a need in is psychiatrists. That's big. We're
mental health issues. Yeah. Well, I'm curious. That issue, Bonnie, raises for me the question of opioids and other addictions. I mean, what I read is, I haven't read statistics about Pennsylvania, but that the pandemic has increased the issues of addiction. Is that your experience, or do you all know? Is that a challenge?
The experience that I've seen is the addiction rate has increased, and especially in our area, it is with the methamphetamines. It is.
Oh, so it's not so much the opioids anymore. It's back to the meth.
No, it's meth.
The opioids are continuing, but it's the meth that, it's easier, it's cheaper, and it's a lot. It's devastating.
Yes.
And relating that back to housing, the homes that have been blighted and are very inexpensive make a perfect harbor for that kind of trafficking. They come in and they'll buy a home and set up an operation. Sometimes in some of our better neighborhoods, it's really disturbing.
It is. And to piggyback off of what Bonnie had said too about our dental issues, well, that goes right back to transportation, because in order for us to be able to get to the pediatric care that we so desperately need here, that's Pittsburgh, that's Butler, in order for us to be able to get a client there, it takes a lot. Yeah. So
wow. Well, let's speak a little bit. One more on the problem side. Then we're going to move to see what can we do. Okay. Sister Janice, one last problem. All right, go for it.
Oh no, it wasn't going to be a problem. It was going to be an effort towards the solution.
Oh, okay, cool.
I thought, for example, we together can try to talk to the Pitt University School of Dentistry and suggest that they set up mobile clinics. Children's Hospital has a mobile clinic, and drive it out to these counties where there are no dentists for the kids.
Well, the good news is on the solution side too, is we have had the Salvation Army has a dental clinic, and there are some of our local schools have the dentists coming into the schools. So we're making some progress, but you still have to be able to attract the dentists who want to ideally stay here long term and build those relationships. And that's been the challenge.
When we did our rural roundtable in Tiffin, Ohio, we heard that in their town, it's northwestern Ohio, and they had a dentist driving down once a week from Detroit to have a practice, just because the need was so huge. So I thought that was an interesting model. So it wasn't a permanent person, but it was a weekly service that was provided. So that was an interesting way that they were coping with it. Okay, so Bonnie,
it's Susan, a little more general though, but so we have often had that situation where we have professionals, whether it's healthcare professionals, education professionals, or business professionals, who choose to live outside the community and drive in, a day or two a week or whatever. And I think that's been a problem for
interesting. Talk to me. Why?
We actually need people that can come in and be invested in our community. They help to retain a good housing stock. We know when people come into a community and live in a community, they're more inclined to invest in whether it's philanthropy towards our nonprofits, to supporting our schools and our churches. And we need the wisdom of their serving on our local boards and being part of local leadership. If they're living somewhere else, an hour or two away, which has again often been the case, they're also not staying. So we don't have that that continuum of leadership and mentorship that is critical to building communities. We're working on it. We launched a leadership program 3 years ago. We're really spending time working with young professionals, but we need more of that across the entire community, and our business community to be invested in seeing that through as well.
I'm so glad you raised that, Susan, because I think that often okay, I'm a city person. As a city person, I think of how do we get you the resources you need? And I get focused on the resources and not as much on the community. And how do we build communities? That's the struggle.
When you're my neighbor. So when we bring those people in who also, who provide services, but they're also neighborly. So we recognize each other and we care about each other and we care about each other's children. We protect each other's children when we get to know each other more. The protectiveness that we had in the kind of neighborhood I grew up in and continue to live in, has kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. But I think building those kind of communities where we actually know and care about each other for decades.
What's interesting, what I'm realizing in this moment is, Janine, you folks at Project Home, you build community. Sister Ann, you're busy building community. And Sister Janice, you've created this immigrant community reality. So I'm curious, what are you finding in the urban setting to create community?
Well, I was going to suggest to Susan and the folks from Venango County, when you mentioned that, you have a scarcity of workers or that you want more people to come into your region. I am constantly pitching, make yourself an immigrant-friendly area. I pitched that to Westmoreland County, and I've got some folks to listen to me.
It's happening in Scranton. It's happened in Scranton. That they made a big shift because of that. So, okay, but Sister Ann, I was trying to get you in, so come on in.
Yeah, I was going to say our families have a community. And they build that community, but similar to what Susan was saying, many of them are of the same economic level, and they have the same challenges. And it would be getting in, even for the children or for the different, raising the level of housing in our neighborhoods, to have a mixed community where you have models in there, you have people buying into that, that people who would really invest, not just by a donation, but would invest by living, working, and sharing and modeling a different experience of living, and create that kind of a community, I think would be a wonderful way to turn around some of the neighborhoods that are here where it's all that our families experience. Some of them, they grew up, they live here, it's their lifestyle. And they're good people and they want the best for their children, but they don't have a model that would help them believe in themselves, that I can do this. So I think that would be a great help here as well.
That could be an interesting Pennsylvania-wide campaign.
Yeah, I suspect that the urban areas have this same issue, but when we look back, 30, 40, 50 years, we had a lot of big employers, and there was this modeling of the opportunity to get a better job, a better position. The mentors were built into that situation. And now we have very few large employers, and even they are quick to admit that most of their jobs are very focused, and there's not a pathway to better. So if you're, at the higher levels of pay, they're hiring right into those positions. If you are an entry level or mid-level worker, probably not. In most cases, you're not going to see a pathway to better. There are some that are, so I don't want to say that none. But when you look back at the corporate offices and the banks and many of the manufacturers of the past that provided that pathway, they're just not here anymore. Your best bet for getting better pay or more experience is to leave the job you're in and go somewhere else, which is a full employment challenge.
Wow. That's really interesting. Janine, you put a couple of things in the chat that I hope you can slip in on this dentistry thing, but I'm curious as to, at Project Home, that your experience of community and modeling and being able to do that change.
Yeah, I mean, at Project Home, we talk up our slogan is none of us are home until all of us are home. And what we know is that we each need each other. And that is people on the street, funders, politicians. It takes all of us doing our part to make that happen. And so that call, whether it's none of us have healthcare until all of us have healthcare, none of us have education until all of us have education. And for us, none of us are home until all of us are home. We really need to lean on each other to do that, but we can't do it by ourselves. It requires all of us working towards a solution and having our voice heard. And what 2020 is all about, having our voice heard. Making sure that we're counted in the census, making sure that each and every one of us has our voice heard. At the polls. So we have to get out there. We have to vote. We have to be counted, and that's really the way that our communities will continue to thrive and be strong. The more we lean on each other.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, we're almost at the end of our time together, and I am super grateful for this conversation. But everybody, including Bonnie, gets to put in, what do you want the viewers of our little video chat to take away about this coming together, about making Pennsylvania whole? It could be making our nation whole. But what message, what concern, what do you want to lift up that they can carry forward? Because I know, just as you were saying, Janine, about voting, is we know that every vote matters. And what we're talking about on the bus is being a multi-issue voter, holding a heart for all of our people, whether you're in the cities or the rural communities. We got to hold a heart for everybody, and that how we vote makes a difference. So what would you, and we're just going to do a little lightning round here of what do you want folks to take away from our conversation? And I'll ask for a brave volunteer to start us.
I'll start. I put it in the chat just now. One of the things I've found very effective is working in faith-based groups, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, joining together. And this is happening in the rural counties that I work with also. And those groups coming together first to talk about, can we get to a place where we can talk to each other? Those of us with different ideas. And then talk to each other on trying to come up with solutions for our community.
How do we move forward together? Good question. All right.
Yeah, I had the same thought. I mean, I think we have to have meaningful conversations with one another. We have to be able to find ways to sit down and talk to people who think differently than we think, that have different experiences. And we should do it, first in our homes and then in our neighborhoods and then our broader community. And it's really meaningful to have the opportunity to do it with people outside of our community like this. So thank you for giving us the opportunity on more than one occasion. I hope we'll do it often.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I find it so rich. Maybe Bonnie wants to weigh in while you've got her there, Susan. Don't mute yourself, though. You muted yourself, Hudson. Okay, there we go.
You're ready.
Yeah, I haven't been able to hear much about what, unfortunately, much, except that I have heard bits and pieces. But I would say that this has been a great opportunity to listen to others and find out that we're all facing the same issues, maybe on different scales, but we all have problems and we all have solutions to go with them. And it's so great to be able to share those. We're all in this together. So, I just really enjoy talking and listening to others and learning from others.
Wow. And I enjoyed your perseverance in making this happen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Megan.
And I'm gonna piggyback off of what Bonnie said. It's been really amazing to see all of us come together, and this is wonderful. What a great opportunity this has been to be able to talk to individuals from across the state, and it is refreshing to know that we are seeing the same issues across the board, and that we're not alone in this, that even, everybody's here together. And I think that, again, what Bonnie said, like, we are all in this together, and the amazing work that is being done from individuals that are in this roundtable, every, agencies out helping one-on-one individuals, families. I mean, it's been amazing to watch individuals come out of the woodwork and really get hands-on, and I'm hoping that it continues.
Great, thank you. Sister Ann?
Okay. I think, as I've listened to everybody, I think for me, the hope would be that what is experienced by us in learning this about each other, and I've not spent much time in parts of rural Pennsylvania, but what we've learned from each other is what I would like the people of the city and the people of a more affluent area to learn about each other, that our needs are the same for good family, for good education, for good care, and that by working together, we could really change some of the struggles that, whether they're rural areas or whether they're inner city areas, we could really strengthen this. And I think we would need to have leadership, whether it's city, state, national, that understand the importance of working together across whatever we consider barriers, whether it's economic, whether it's education, whatever, that we're all human beings, and we all need each other to do that. And to, just experiencing this in this small setting has been wonderful. And it would be my hope that we can somehow create pockets where that could continue to grow, and get a stronger sense of unity.
Amen. What a great thing. Okay, Janine, you get the last.
Yes.
What's your takeaway?
Well, we know we're connected, and that this conversation shows this, have the same needs, and we know the solutions, and we know that we need the political will, because none of us are home until all of us are home. So we've tried to make that easy for you. We have a lot of resources at projecthome.org. You can send a message to your senators about the HEROES Act and also the Moving Forward Act, so we can get both the short-term and the long-term needs of our community met. We also hope that you will continue to join us to make sure that all of our neighbors are registered to vote. We also have some resources at projecthome.org to make that possible too. So please join us, and none of us are home until all of us are home.
Amen. And I get to do my commercial too for nunsonthebus.org. nunsonthebus2020.org. And you can see our virtual map, which connects each state to their voting information, each state to demographics, videos from Nuns on the Bus. We've got, you can't believe the ton of stuff we've got up there, but this is the best part, is that if you register on the right-hand side of the screen, if you register to do your own tour, you get a ticket to ride the bus. And on the ticket is a grayed out bus. And after you've made 30 stops across the country, at each stop, your bus gets a little more color and a little more color and a little more color. So as you learn about our whole country, your bus gets filled in. And after 30 stops, we have like almost 200 stops up there, and our roundtable will become one stop. But as you get 30 stops, you win a prize. It's so much fun. It's actually a great game, but it's a great way that we're trying to build the common good, because there's so much more that connects us than divides us. And that's why we believe that we need to be multi-issue voters. We can't just vote for one issue or for one locale. We've got to come together and think of the needs of each other. And as we found out in this conversation, they're similar, but they may have different results. And I'm especially grateful for the idea that it's not just about getting services, it's about getting commitment to community. And I think that was raised both in the rural and urban setting. How can we commit to building up our community? So Thank you, my friends, for this first conversation across geographic divides. I learned a lot, and I'm really grateful. Thank you. See you on the road on the bus.
Thanks for having us on the bus today. We're so grateful.
Love it.